I had my dress fittings booked and a $40,000 venue deposit paid when my fiancé Noah decided to end our 5-year relationship. He didn't have the guts to tell me to my face, though. Instead, he waited until he was drunk in front of his entire office at a disgusting sports bar and told them as the punchline to a joke about being tied down. Honestly, if Piper were just a jaw-dropper, I'd be less stressed about the forever part. But she's a tough sell. That was the line that ended 6 years of my life. But the true story started this morning, 3 days later, when his mother, my future mother-in-law Valerie, called me, sobbing so hard I genuinely thought someone had died. She finally choked out the words. "Piper, darling, he's lying to you. There's something else, something he should have told you months ago. I'm Piper, and I'm about to unleash a quiet, precise revenge on the man who publicly humiliated me, and the toxic friend who masterminded the whole thing. The wedding is off, but the debt is about to be paid. This is going to be intense. This is the truth I've been sitting on for months, and honestly, admitting it to strangers on the internet is easier than telling my own mother. Noah and I had been together for just over 5 years, engaged for the last 8 months. We met through mutual friends at a housewarming party. Just 2 people hitting it off over a shared hatred of IPAs and a mutual, deep-seated love for 90s cartoons. Our relationship was built on comfort, not fireworks. It was a cozy, dependable kind of love. We dated for a year, moved in together after 2, adopted our incredibly demanding rescue dog Shadow at 3, and got engaged last summer. The proposal wasn't extravagant, just a Saturday morning hike to our favorite lookout point where he nervously fumbled the ring box out of his pocket. I said yes immediately. We were the perfect picture of an aggressively average, happily settled couple. We set the date for this October at a gorgeous rustic vineyard. Well, I set the date. And I planned everything. I'm a project manager by trade. My brain thrives on deadlines and budgets. Noah, a quiet data scientist, is the opposite. He'd nod along, say, "Whatever you think, babe," and then immediately retreat back into his computer. I told myself it was fine. I was the planner, he was the chill guy. We balanced out. But when I sent the $40,000 invoice for the venue retainer, he stared at the number like it was written in a foreign language. "That's enough to buy a nice car, Pipes, for one party." I brushed it off as normal groom anxiety. The subtle, corrosive shift began about 4 months ago. It coincided perfectly with him being assigned to a major high-pressure project at work, and more importantly, with him getting tangled up with his college friend Gavin. Gavin is pure toxicity, a perpetually single man who treats marriage like a contagious plague and views women as disposable accessories. Suddenly, Noah was decompressing with Gavin 3 nights a week. Beers, loud sports, and what I later learned was relentless anti-commitment rhetoric. My texts about the crucial floral centerpiece meeting or the DJ contract would sit unread for hours. When he finally replied, it was always the same. A clipped, distant response. "'Kay. Sounds good. Handle it." I tried to talk to him. I'd approach him gently, but he'd snap. "Piper, I'm working 16-hour days. My job is demanding. Can we talk about the difference between satin and chiffon later?" He was physically present in our apartment, but emotionally miles away, constantly scrolling through his phone with a jumpy, paranoid energy, flinching if I leaned in for a kiss. My best friend, Jesse, a pragmatic lawyer, tried to reassure me. "It's the jitters, Elle. The final boss level of commitment fear. Give him space." So I tried one last-ditch effort. Last Friday, I booked a reservation at that impossible-to-get-into fusion place downtown. I wore my best dress and prepped a mental list of non-wedding topics. It was supposed to be a reset button. It was a cold, complete failure. He was totally distracted, checking his phone repeatedly, not even hiding it. When I finally steered the conversation to our planned honeymoon in the Italian Dolomites, he dropped the first bomb. "I don't know, Piper. About the trip. About all of this." My stomach went cold, turning everything inside me into ice. I forced my voice to stay even. "All of what, Noah? The honeymoon? The wedding? The marriage?" He started fidgeting, avoiding eye contact. He mumbled about Gavin's relentless, toxic commentary on being locked in, and then brought up a story about his cousin's brutal divorce. "I just keep thinking, Piper, what if we get it wrong? I need time to think." The whispered argument in that fancy restaurant felt like a slow-motion death. The ride home was suffocating. He slept on the couch, leaving me alone in the bedroom with Shadow, my tears, and the awful, hollow sound of silence. The next morning, he left early to meet Gavin and some work friends at the Alley, a dive bar known for cheap beer and loud, aggressive male bonding. I was too exhausted to fight. I was sitting in my car in the grocery store parking lot later that afternoon when my phone buzzed. It was Max, one of the junior analysts on Noah's team, a sweet, quiet guy I'd always been kind to. "Piper, please tell me you're okay. I was at the Alley today. Noah said something really messed up. You deserve to know the truth." I called him instantly, my heart hammering. Max sounded sick to his stomach, stumbling over his words as he tried to navigate the bro code and his conscience. I pressed him, my voice tight and firm, until he finally spat it out. The guys were teasing Noah about the wedding costs and giving up his freedom. When Gavin, of course it was Gavin, demanded to know what Noah's real hang-up was, Noah, apparently halfway to blacking out, had laughed, clinked his bottle against Gavin's, and slurred the line that ended my 6-year relationship. Honestly, if Piper were more of a jaw-dropper, I'd be less stressed about the forever part. But she's a tough sell. A tough sell. 6 years of building a life, loyalty, and compromise. And I was a tough sell. Something he had to convince himself to buy. Max said he and a couple of other guys immediately shut Noah down, but Noah just got aggressive and claimed they couldn't take a joke. I sat in that parking lot, weeping into the steering wheel until my shirt was soaked. The lie was exposed. It wasn't stress. It wasn't budget. It was a failure of respect wrapped in casual cruelty. I was a casualty of his insecurity. When I finally went inside, Noah was passed out, smelling like stale beer and shame. I grabbed Shadow and went to the bedroom, locking the door and ignoring the ugly diamond ring still on my finger. I didn't argue the next morning. I didn't yell. I just packed a bag, called my older brother, Elias, and left. I texted Noah one short, devastating sentence. I know what you said. I'm done. Then I turned off my phone. The next day, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the voicemail indicator. It was Valerie, Noah's mom. Piper. Darling, it's Valerie. Noah called me last night, crying. I need to tell you something. Something he hasn't had the courage to tell you yet. I'm sitting here staring at the number, realizing that the tough sell joke was just the flimsy wrapping paper on a much uglier package. And I was about to unwrap the full truth. I drove immediately to meet Valerie. We chose a quiet park bench, and she looked utterly destroyed. Her usual composed, elegant demeanor was shattered. She kept fidgeting with her silk scarf, her eyes red-rimmed. She started by profusely apologizing for her son's behavior, calling the tough sell comment a moment of profound moral weakness. But then, she got to the heart of the matter. The reason Noah was so frantic, so defensive, and so distant. The name, Chloe. Chloe, the new, very smart, very driven systems architect on his major project team. The one he'd mentioned a handful of times as super competent, and the only one who understands the legacy code. Valerie confessed, tearing up, that nothing physical had happened. At least according to Noah's desperate late-night confession to her. But he admitted to having a serious emotional connection. They were working late, texting constantly about the project, and Noah felt seen and intellectually challenged by Chloe in a way he hadn't felt by me in months. This, Valerie explained, was the real root of his commitment anxiety and his sudden cold feet. The wedding jitters were just the convenient excuse he used to avoid the messy, honest conversation. The joke suddenly clicked into place with terrifying clarity. It wasn't just a drunk slip. It was a desperate, self-sabotaging act. He was using Chloe as his imagined escape route, and he was using the tough sell joke to make me the villain in our own breakup story. He was trying to push me away so he wouldn't have to face the moral wreckage of ending the engagement himself. Valerie's perspective was heartbreakingly raw. Her own ex-husband, Noah's father, had pulled the exact same emotional maneuver years ago. The distance, the manufactured arguments, the subtle cruelty, all designed to make his wife feel unwelcome before he admitted his affair. She didn't want me to go through the same denial she did. He's terrified of becoming his father, Piper, Valerie whispered, her voice thick. But in his cowardice, he's becoming him in the most destructive way possible. He's choosing a lie over honesty. I left the meeting with a strange, horrible calm. My mind was now running the numbers on the total breach of trust. He hadn't just gotten cold feet. He had entertained an emotional affair and then publicly humiliated me to cover his tracks. Cowardice was his only excuse. I texted Noah, who had been blowing up my phone with generic "I love you" and "I'm sorry" texts, none of which mentioned the real reason for his anxiety. I know about Chloe. I know you've been lying. I'm taking Shadow and staying with Elias. Don't contact me again until you can tell me the complete truth. I blocked him for the rest of the day. I needed silence. Later that evening, as I was sitting on my brother Elias's sectional, trying to watch a mindless sitcom, my phone rang. It was Scarlett, Noah's older sister. Scarlett and I were incredibly close. We were the planners, the realists, the two women who kept Noah somewhat grounded. She was frantic, having heard the devastating news from Valerie. She was fiercely on my side. Piper, I am so sorry. I'm going to kill him. Please don't listen to anything Gavin says. He's a disease. Then, she hesitated, her voice dropping. Wait, I need to ask you. Is this about the leadership retreat? My blood went cold again. My voice was a tight whisper. The leadership retreat? What about it, Scarlett? She backpedaled immediately, clearly realizing her slip-up. Oh God, never mind, it's nothing. There's a rumor. Please, Piper, just focus on you. Get the truth from Noah. Her reaction, the raw panic in her voice, confirmed it. The betrayal had a location. It had a time. It wasn't just office texts and late nights. There was an event, a place away from the office where things had escalated. A feeling of dread, heavy and cold, settled in my chest. I knew I couldn't get the whole truth from Noah. He was too deep in his self-made web of lies. I needed to go straight to the source. The most bizarre yet predictable text arrived an hour later. Unknown number. Piper, this is Chloe. I know you know. We need to talk. I know there's a rumor, and I promise you, what you think happened is not the whole story. Just the two of us. I know the truth about Gavin. I stared at the text. The alleged emotional mistress reaching out to the humiliated fiancé. This was either an act of ultimate malice or a genuine cry for help. I was terrified, but my project manager brain took over. I needed the data. I typed the only two words that mattered: where and when. The polite life was over. The investigation had begun. The meeting with Chloe took place the next afternoon at a crowded, brightly lit cafe. Neutral, public, and safe. I walked in, wearing my most severe black blazer, channeling the energy of a corporate lawyer preparing for a difficult deposition. Chloe was already there, fiddling nervously with a paper coffee cup. She was younger than I expected, dressed in practical, no-nonsense clothing. She didn't look like the femme fatale of Noah's romantic projections. She looked stressed, tired, and deeply uncomfortable. I sat down, ordered a plain coffee, and kept my guard up. I expected tears, denial, or a full-on attack. What I got was a clinical, detailed account of the situation that flipped the script entirely. "I need you to know right now, Piper," she said, her voice low and frantic. "I had no idea. Nothing romantic ever happened. I'm with someone, Ethan. We've been together for years." She explained that her relationship with Noah was purely professional, driven by their project's intensity. They were the only two on the team who fully understood the legacy system and the new implementation. Yes, they texted constantly, but it was all work. She showed me their thread, a blizzard of technical acronyms, data points, and frustrated rants about server crashes. Not a single suggestive remark. Noah, she explained, was the one who misinterpreted the professional synergy as something more profound. Chloe then explained that the true, underlying problem was Gavin. Gavin wasn't just Noah's toxic friend, he was actively, ruthlessly campaigning against the wedding. She confirmed that Gavin was telling everyone at the office that Noah was trapped, and that Chloe was the shining example of the freedom Noah was missing out on. She'd overheard Gavin telling Noah that their intellectual connection was proof that Piper couldn't satisfy him, and that he needed to explore his options. Gavin was using Noah's work stress and commitment anxiety to break him. Chloe was just a convenient, attractive target for Noah's emotional projection. She was the scapegoat. Then came the moment that made the blood run cold again, the leadership retreat. Chloe confirmed they had both been at the 3-day retreat out of state, the one Scarlett had mentioned. She said Noah acted like a ghost, avoiding her, then staring at her from across the room, clearly terrified. Gavin was there too, loudly encouraging Noah to go out and make it count before the leash snaps. "The most disturbing part," Chloe whispered, leaning closer, "is what Gavin bragged about at the retreat's final dinner. He was showing off to some colleagues that he'd installed monitoring software on Noah's old personal tablet, the one he uses for streaming and fantasy leagues, as a joke to keep tabs on his gambling. But he admitted he was checking it for texts and browser history too." The puzzle snapped into place. The constant phone checking, the paranoia, the defensiveness. Noah wasn't hiding a new lover. He was hiding his own weakness, terrified of the toxic friend who was monitoring him and weaponizing his guilt. The constant scrolling was a reflex of fear, not disinterest. Chloe wasn't the villain. She was collateral damage, the person Noah built into a fantasy to avoid confronting his own fear of commitment and his pathetic need for Gavin's validation. I left the cafe with a strange mix of nausea and exhilaration. I had the facts. The betrayal was so much deeper, more complex and utterly pathetic than I could have imagined. I was not the tough cell. I was the person standing in the way of a meticulously planned sabotage. Chloe's final words echoed in my head. "He needs help, Piper, but you need justice. And Gavin needs to be stopped." I realized then that my revenge would be quiet, precise, and targeted at the true source of the poison. I immediately called Jessie, my lawyer friend, and told her everything. Her pragmatic, sharp mind was exactly what I needed. "Okay, Piper," she said, her voice firm. "We need to execute a clean exit. But first, we need to dismantle this lie in front of the people who matter. We are setting up a tribunal. And we are bringing in the manipulator." I agreed. I needed an audience. I needed to reclaim my dignity in the eyes of his family. I texted Scarlett immediately. "I know about Chloe. I know about Gavin's tracking software. I need a meeting at your place tonight. And I need Gavin there. Tell Noah it's mandatory. Do not tell him why." Scarlett's response was instant, fierce, and utterly supportive. "Done. I'll get the witness list ready. You deserve better, Elle." The drive to Scarlett's house was the most focused I'd been in weeks. My anxiety had been replaced by a quiet, settled rage. This was my event now. I was taking back control. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to deliver a performance review that ended careers. I dressed to look utterly composed and professionally unforgiving. A sharp gray blazer, black slacks, and makeup applied with ruthless precision. I looked like a woman who had come to collect on a very large debt. Scarlett had prepared her small but elegant dining room like a war room. She had ordered simple takeout. Chinese, Noah's favorite, a subtle, cruel reminder of the comfort he was about to lose. The attendees, the jury, the defendant, and the plaintiff were all present. Piper, the plaintiff. Composed, armed with facts, demanding resolution. Noah, the defendant. Pale, haggard, looking like he hadn't slept in a week, already knowing he was trapped. Valerie, the key witness ally, worried but fiercely supportive of me. Scarlett, the judge co-strategist, radiating cold fury at her brother. Gavin, the toxic catalyst puppet master. Smirking, projecting aggressive confidence, clearly thinking this was just a hysterical woman melting down. The silence was the first weapon. We sat, pushing around the noodles and rice. Gavin kept shooting Noah condescending looks, a subtle pat on the shoulder, trying to reassure his puppet that the strings were still attached. Finally, I spoke. My voice was low, calm, and utterly devoid of emotion. It cut through the tension like a razor. I looked directly at Gavin. Gavin, thank you for coming. I assume you're here to support your friend Noah. I appreciate you taking time away from your busy schedule of encouraging infidelity, emotional terrorism, and the deployment of illegal surveillance software. Gavin's smirk evaporated. He tried to interrupt, but I held up a hand. The silence was absolute. I know about Chloe, I stated. And I know about the leadership retreat. I know about the conversations you had with Noah telling him he was trapped. And I know what you told Chloe, that Noah had developed feelings for her, to make her the perfect, attractive fantasy for him to project his fear onto. I laid out the facts, point by point. How Gavin had systematically convinced Noah that professional connection with Chloe was a sign of a deeper failure in our relationship. I explained that Noah's cowardice and fear of his father's footsteps were weaponized by Gavin to justify his own pathetic, single existence. Noah finally looked up, his eyes bloodshot, staring at the empty wall. He mumbled that I was right, that he was weak, that he had let himself believe the fantasy because it was easier than having a hard conversation. Then, I delivered the final crushing blow, the real reason for the meeting. And the joke, Noah? The tough sell joke? He started crying, his shoulders shaking. It was for Gavin Piper. He was calling me whipped all week. He was making fun of the wedding costs. I said the most horrible thing I could think of to make him stop, to prove I wasn't a soft touch. It had nothing to do with you. It had everything to do with me. I corrected him, my voice unwavering. You were so afraid of looking weak in front of this man, I gestured sharply toward Gavin, that you chose to publicly dismantle the self-worth of the woman you claimed to love. Your fear of being mocked by a loser was greater than your respect for your partner. That is not a joke, Noah. That is a confession of your true priorities. Gavin, seeing the entire operation collapsing around him, tried one last desperate maneuver. This is insane! You're getting dramatic, Piper. It's just guy talk. She's overreacting, Noah. That was his final unforgivable mistake. Scarlett slammed her hand on the table so hard the water glasses jumped. Dramatic? We are supposed to be at a rehearsal dinner next month, Gavin. You poisoned my brother's mind because you're a miserable, commitment-phobic failure. Get up and get out. You are not welcome in this family ever again. Valerie fixed Gavin with a look of pure, cold maternal fury. Leave, Gavin, now! If you ever contact my son or Piper again, you will be hearing from my lawyer. Do you understand? Gavin, utterly defeated, stood up, mumbled something about toxic women, and stumbled out the door. The immediate wave of relief was palpable, like a toxic gas had been vented from the room. With the manipulator gone, I looked at the three people left: Valerie, Scarlett, and Noah. The wedding? I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. The wedding is off. The relationship is over. Noah didn't protest. He simply nodded, his shoulders slumping in total surrender. The confrontation was over. The relationship was dead. Now came the brutal, transactional logistics of disengagement. The night ended in a devastating mutual agreement. The 6 years were over. The engagement was dissolved. Noah was a weak, easily manipulated man, and I was no longer the woman who would tolerate it. The support from Valerie and Scarlett was my lifeline. They told me, repeatedly, that I was the family they wanted to keep. Scarlett drove me back to Elias's apartment. I was emotionally drained, but incredibly calm. I had achieved my objective. The truth was out, the toxin was removed, and my dignity was reclaimed in front of the people who mattered. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry. I made a list. My best work always happens at 3 a.m. Project, disengagement. Phase 1, damage control. Call venue, non-refundable retainer, $8,000, sunk cost, accept loss. Return ring, hold for now. Negotiating leverage, emotional collateral. Notify guests, the mutual amicable decision script. Ugh. Move out. Noah agreed to stay with his cousin. I would handle the lease break. Change social media. Must be done at a stealth hour. The next morning, the logistics began. Noah and I spoke in clipped professional tones. We were two business partners dissolving a catastrophic venture. Finances. We closed the joint checking account, splitting the remainder precisely in half. Painful, but clean. The apartment. My name was the primary on the lease. He would move to his cousin's place. I would pay the lease break penalty. The dog. Shadow stayed with me, non-negotiable. Noah didn't argue. The first call was the hardest, the vineyard coordinator. I explained the situation calmly. She was sympathetic but firm. The retainer for an October wedding, canceled in August, non-refundable, $8,000 gone. Money we had saved diligently for a year. I felt the sharp sting of the loss, but it was quickly overridden by the knowledge that this was the cost of my freedom. An expensive exit fee. But the true satisfaction, the quiet, poetic karma, unfolded without my involvement. Gavin, the toxic catalyst, sent me a pathetic, self-pitying text, clearly trying to save face. Hey, Piper, sorry things got intense. These things happen for a reason, you know? Just needed to make sure Ryan wasn't being controlled. You'll find someone better. Take care. I didn't respond. I simply took a screenshot of the text, sent it to Scarlett with a single, unreadable winky face emoji, and blocked Gavin's number permanently across all platforms. His voice was removed from my universe. That wasn't the revenge. The revenge was the consequence of his own arrogance. An hour later, Scarlett called me back, her voice barely containing a triumphant laugh. She had the full, delicious story from one of Noah's colleagues. Remember that monitoring software Gavin installed on Noah's tablet and accessed from his office? She asked. Turns out his own corporate IT department flagged the unauthorized remote access and the suspicious file transfer. They investigated, found the surveillance software, and realized he'd been using company resources to stalk his friend. He was fired, Piper. Fired instantly. No severance. For corporate espionage. The story is already legendary in their sector. I sat there, packing his spare jackets, and let out a long, slow breath. I didn't scheme this. I didn't lift a finger. Gavin, the man who destroyed my engagement to feed his own pathetic ego, had accidentally destroyed his own career. Karma is a ruthless, self-executing system of justice. Chloe, the scapegoat, sent me a final, heartfelt text. I am so truly sorry for the pain he caused. I have asked for a transfer. I hope you find peace. I believed her. She was a victim too. The mundane tasks were still brutal. Changing my relationship status on LinkedIn. Explaining the mutual decision to my distant judgmental aunt. Watching Noah's carefully packed boxes sit by the door. The physical end of our shared reality. But I was moving forward. I was evolving. I was no longer the tough cell. I was the one who had escaped. It's been over a month since the family meeting. I'm writing this from my new, smaller apartment. I paid the lease break fee for the old place, and while financially painful, it felt like paying for an exorcism. I needed to get out of the ghost ship we built. My new place is further from my job. The shower pressure is questionable, and the living room is tiny. But it has one beautiful thing. A massive window facing the rising sun. I've become a relentless financial hawk. No more shared expenses, no more splitting the cost of everything from toothpaste to streaming services. My budget spreadsheet is now a living document, color-coded for survival. I am now the person who drives 5 extra minutes for the cheaper gas, can accurately estimate the cost of generic cereal per ounce, prioritizes savings over absolutely everything else. It's terrifying, but the control is intoxicating. I am building a future that is entirely dependent on my own meticulous planning. I've also started therapy, not just for the breakup, but to understand why I allowed Noah's fear of being whipped to become the blueprint for our life. My therapist quickly identified that I had become emotionally invisible, constantly prioritizing his stress and comfort over my own needs and desires. My new mission: reclaim Piper. The tiny window has become my sanctuary. I bought a few cheap pots and started growing herbs. The basil keeps dying in a tragically quick fashion, a clear, fast failure, just like the engagement. But the mint is thriving. It's aggressive, resilient, and virtually impossible to kill. I'm choosing to embody the mint. I am Mint Piper. I'm taking back the small things I compromised on. I'm hiking on Saturday mornings again, something I stopped because Noah complained about the early wake-up call. I'm listening to loud, dramatic music while I clean, something he hated. I'm buying bright-colored clothes that I love, not the muted colors he found more flattering. The engagement ring is still in the velvet box. I finally decided that the diamond, the symbol of the lie, was going to fund my freedom. I'm taking it to a jeweler next week to sell it for its gold and diamond equity. That cash is going straight into my freedom fund, not a down payment, not a luxury item, but liquid cash for my next, most decisive move. I haven't seen Noah in person since the keys were exchanged. Our texts are rare, brief, and impersonal. He seems to be sticking with therapy, and Scarlett confirmed that he's taking it seriously. He's dealing with his father complex and his need for external validation. And Gavin? The word is he's in a serious downward spiral. Professionally toxic, personally radioactive. His social media attempts at projecting a carefree life are brittle and pathetic. I don't feel glee. I feel a calm, surgical satisfaction. He got exactly what he deserved. Irrelevance. But the most bizarre, exciting, and terrifying decision I've made is what I have planned for the week the wedding was supposed to happen. I am reclaiming the ultimate symbol of our failed future. The emotional weight of the canceled wedding had settled on one final, crushing financial loss: the non-refundable, prepaid 10-day rental of a beautiful, remote seaside cottage in the Italian Dolomites. It was supposed to be our mini-moon, a secluded, romantic kickoff to our married life. Another $3,000 sunk cost. I couldn't look at the confirmation email for weeks. It was a physical reminder of the life that was violently aborted. Then, Jesse, my pragmatic lawyer friend, delivered the final, life-changing suggestion. Go anyway, Piper. Go alone. Reclaim the money. Reclaim the time. Turn it into an unhoneymoon. The idea initially terrified me. 10 days alone in a cottage built for romance? That's the setup for a mental breakdown. But Jesse was right. I needed to prove to myself that I was a complete, whole person, not half a couple in search of an anchor. This had to be the final, decisive act of self-sovereignty. So, next week, I'm flying to Italy. I packed my hiking boots, 3 great paperbacks, and a fierce, unshakable resolve. This has to be a solo mission. Before I left, Noah asked to meet. One final time, I agreed. Coffee shop, public, quick. He looked utterly defeated, the shadow of the man I loved. After awkward small talk about work and shadow, he finally pulled out a battered notebook. I'm in therapy, Piper, he said, his voice raw. This is the journal my therapist makes me keep. I'm doing the work. I know I was a coward, I know I was selfish, and I know the joke was unforgivable. He didn't ask for me back. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just wanted me to know that he was finally facing his own issues. He was working on not being his father, and on not being the puppet Gavin manipulated. I should have done this years ago, he admitted. But I'm doing it now. I hope you find everything you deserve, Piper. It was the most honest, self-aware moment of our entire 6 years together. And for his sake, I truly hoped he found peace. He left with one last, profound piece of confirmation. I'm glad you're still close with Mom and Scarlett. They deserve to keep good people like you in their lives. That is the strangest, most beautiful part of this whole mess. The enduring bond with his family. Valerie and Scarlett are still my family. They text me constantly, supporting my solo trip and reminding me of my worth. The unhoneymoon feels like the ultimate final act of closure. I am taking the symbol of our shattered future and transforming it into the launchpad for my new one. I'm not running from the pain. I'm walking through it, solo, to the other side. I don't know what I'll find in that quiet cottage. Maybe just an awkward realization that I don't know how to cook for one. But I know I won't be waiting for a text from him. I'm packing my bags now. Shadow is sulking dramatically on the pile of hiking gear. I look at my thriving mint plant, aggressively resilient in its cheap ceramic pot. I think I'll make it. I'm writing this final part from the deck of the Italian cottage. It's been 3 months since the family intervention and 3 days since I landed here. The air is cool, carrying the scent of salt and ancient stone, and the sound of the ocean is a relentless, soothing white noise. The cottage is heartbreakingly romantic, all rough-hewn wood and oversized windows, designed specifically for 2 people to wake up in. For the first 48 hours, the silence was agonizing. I was so used to Noah's constant, low-grade humming, his video games, his typing, his heavy sighing, that the quiet felt like a physical absence. I found myself staring at the 2 matching coffee mugs, the 2 empty hooks on the back of the door, and felt the sharp, isolated sting of being utterly alone. But then, the quiet shifted. It became peace. I started structuring my days not around his schedule, but around the sun. I hike every morning. I eat a massive, solitary breakfast on the deck. I read an entire novel in one day, something I hadn't allowed myself to do in years. I realized how much I had internalized his anxiety, constantly editing my own existence to prevent his next stress-induced meltdown. The biggest truth I've grasped here is how little the humiliation matters now. The tough sell joke was the necessary, cruel wake-up call. It was the moment I stopped asking, "What's wrong with me?" and started asking, "What is wrong with him that he thinks he gets to assign me a price?" It forced me to look at the relationship through the lens of pure, objective self-respect, and I realized I had to walk away, regardless of the cost. Noah is still in therapy. Scarlett confirmed that Gavin is still unemployable and struggling publicly. Karma has a very clean ledger. I have no ill will towards Noah, only a profound gratitude that he released me before the vows. I sold the ring. The money is now sitting in the Freedom Fund. I felt no sentimentality when I handed it over. It was just an expensive paperweight that had symbolized a very cheap lie. This trip, this unhoneymoon, has cemented my transition. I am not grieving a fiancé. I am celebrating the rediscovery of my own company. Yesterday I was walking through the tiny local market and a song came on, a cheesy 80s ballad that was our official, actual first dance song from the DJ's pre-approved list. 3 months ago, I would have burst into tears and fled the market. This time, I didn't. I felt a slight twinge, a dull pressure like pressing lightly on a bruise that is 90% healed. Not pain, but recognition. A recognition that something significant was once there. Then I bought some aggressively fragrant rosemary, the symbol of remembrance, not of regret, and walked out into the sun. I have my mint. I have my spreadsheets. I have my silence. I may have lost an engagement, an $8,000 retainer, and 6 years of my life, but I found my worth, and that is a non-refundable, unnegotiable treasure. The true revenge wasn't in his professional ruin or his emotional collapse. The revenge was simply this: being okay, thriving, and moving on without him. I look out at the cold, vast, beautiful sea, and I know that I am finally, completely free. And my silence will always be louder than his shame.